Hello, and welcome to this dedicated segment of this Let's Play. This time I'm going to show you how to solve this particular puzzle. We're not going to just solve it once, we're going to solve it 3 times. One's the easy version, one's the medium version, and one is the hard version, depending on the difficulty levels. Now, when I did it in the Let's Play, it took me about 10 minutes, so rather than having you watch me slowly figure it out for myself, or just simply editing out, I might as well show you the thought processes behind it. So, here we go. All you really need to know is that the clue on the notice board to the right of this keypad will change depending on the difficulty level. So the code is different per difficulty level, but it's not randomly generated for every time you play, if you get what I mean. If you choose easy riddle mode, this is the notification you get on the board.
Press, move 2 right. Press, move 1 up. Press, move 2 down. Press, and the door shall open.
Now, it's actually pretty easy to see that these clues are related to directions you have to move on the keypad. So once you know the first number, you can figure out the rest of them, but unfortunately we don't know the first number. Luckily, using the first statement, we can already conclude that the first number has to be on the left column, because in order to move to right, it has to be on the very left. So let's start with that. We are on the right column, and if we move to right, they'll all move to the right, which makes sense. And then we have to move 1 up, and if you started at 1, you can't go 1 up, because there's not enough room there. And then you have to move 2 down. Now if you started at 7, then you wouldn't be able to move 2 down because you've only moved up 1, and if you move 2 down you'd go past 9, so it has to be starting at 4. So the answer would have been 4, 6, 3, 9. But we're not done yet! Now this one's a little harder, but it still makes sense if you read it. You just need to think about it for a bit, and it should become pretty obvious. If you choose normal riddle mode, this is what the notice board says.
The first is larger than the second is twice the third is smaller than the fourth is half the first, 4 of the numbers are not repeated, 3 are not in the top row, 2 are not in the right row, 1 of the numbers is the final key. Now it might not be entirely apparent where to start first, and admittedly this is kind of confusing when you first read it, but it might help to start off by writing everything down in a different way. So get a pen and paper out, and feel free to follow along if you want to help out, or if you feel like sorting it out yourself first and then seeing if the answer coincides with what we come up with, feel free to do that too. Now, to make things easier, the first thing you'll probably want to do is to assign each digit of the key code a letter. So let's make the first digit A, the second digit B, the third digit C, and the last digit D. Once we have this written down, we can then sort of convert the description we were given on a notice board into something a bit more easier to understand. So let's say that A is greater than B because the first is larger than the second, B equals to C because the second is twice the third, C is less than D, and D is equal to half of A, or A over 2. Now we also know that there is only 1 number in the top row and 2 numbers in the right row. So when we put in numbers and to try out different values for these for the key code, then we'll know whether or not it's correct with these conditions that we've been told in the sentence. Now, since both B and A are equal to double of another value, then both of those numbers have to be even numbers. So let's start by putting 2 as A. If A was 2, then D would be equal to 1. Now already we have a condition that cannot be met because we have 2 numbers that are in the top row, so A is not equal to 2. If A was 4, the next even number, then D would be 2. And if D was 2, then C would have to be 1 because C is less than D. Now, if C and D is 1 and 2 respectively, then we have 2 values in the top row. Again, this cannot be the case. Next, we'll try putting 6 as the value of A. If A was equal to 6, then D would be equal to 3, because 6 over 2 is 3.
and that means that C can either be 1 or 2. No matter which one of these values C is, it's still 2 numbers occupying the top row, so again it's a value that does not count. The only number left for A is 8, so let's try that out, shall we? If A is equal to 8, then D would be equal to 4. Now if D is equal to 4, then 3 has to be either 1, 2 or 3, which is less than 4. If we make C the value of 3, then that means that B would be 6, because B is 2C, so 2 to 3 is 6. Now we actually have a 4-digit code now. A is equal to 8, B is equal to 6, C is equal to 3, and D is equal to 4. But we have to check those values against the conditions set in the statement on the board. So, none of the numbers repeat. There's only one number in the top row, there's only 2 numbers in the right row, and if we actually check each of those values against those sort of relationships stated, then we actually have the code that works. So, using our powers of logic and deduction, we have determined that the code is in fact 8634. Congratulations, we've unlocked the door. But we're not done yet! Now you might have thought those previous 2 puzzles were pretty fun and made some sense. They're a little challenging, but if you put your mind to them, you'll probably figure it out. But you might also be thinking they're a little out of place. I mean, this isn't Resident Evil, this is Silent Hill. Why are we doing silly number mathematics problems and stuff like that in a horror game? It would make sense in Resident Evil. I mean, that place takes place in science labs and stuff, but not here. We're in an abandoned spooky town full of demons. Why are we doing maths? Well, if you chose hard mode, shit's about to get real! Take a listen to this. Pure eyes, blue like a glassy bead. You are always looking at me, and I am always looking at you. Ah, you're too meek, beautiful, unspoiled. Thus I'm so sad I suffer, and so happy it hurts. I want to hurt you, and destroy you myself. What you would think if you knew how I felt. Would you simply smile, not saying a word? Even curses from your mouth would be as beautiful as pearls. I placed my left hand on your face as though we were to kiss. Then I suddenly shoved my thumb deep into your eye socket, abruptly, decisively, like drilling a hole. And what would it feel like? Like jelly? Trembling with ecstasy, I obscenely mix it around and around. I must taste the warmth of your blood. How would you scream? Would you shriek, it hurts, as cinnabar red tears stream from your crushed eye? You can't know the maddening hunger I felt in the midst of our kisses. So many of them I've lost count. As though drinking in your cries, I bring my hopes to fruition, biting your tongue, shredding it, biting at your lips as if tasting your lipstick. Oh, what euphoric heights I would reach, having my desires fulfilled like a greedy, gluttonous cur. I long too for your cherry-tinted cheeks, tasty enough to bewitch my tongue. I would surely be healed, and would cry like a child. And how is your tender ear? It brushes against my cheek. I want it to creep up to my lips so I can sink my teeth into its flesh. Your left ear, always hearing words whispered sweet as pie. I wanted to hear my true feelings. I never lied, no, but I did have my secrets. Ah, but what must you think of me? Do you hate me? Are you afraid? As though inviting you to the agony at the play's end. If you wish, you could destroy me. I wouldn't care. As you wish, you may destroy me. I wouldn't care.
I, for one, enjoy this poem. Listening to the suffering of humans is always enjoyable for me.
Now, I'm going to go ahead and say this now, but I'm not sure how the hell you're supposed to figure out this puzzle without really thinking. Well, there is a pattern to it, but it's like, how would you ever figure it out? Basically, what you might notice is that a lot of the time the monster talks about eating someone's face. I don't know if it's a monster, it might be a person. But, basically, yeah, he mentions a lot of body parts about the face, namely the eyes, ears, and so on. So, let's take a look at the verses. So, on the 4th verse, it mentions how he shoves his thumb into the eye socket. And after that, the next thing he mentions is licking the cheek below the eye socket to taste the blood. after that, the next thing he mentions a bit later on is biting the mouth and the lips, so that's the mouth. And then the next bit is the cheek, which he longs for the taste of. And then he moves on to the left ear. Now, what you're supposed to figure out is that the parts of the face actually represent the different bits on the keypad. And that bit kinda makes sense, but you have to sort of distinguish what... Because he mentions different parts of the face quite a few times. He mentions placing his hand on her left cheek, for example, so it's not really specific. So what you're supposed to figure out is to differentiate it. It's the bits that he basically eats. It's the bit that he uses his mouth on. So the first one is actually the odd one out here, because he uses his thumb to gouge the eye socket. Meanwhile, he uses his tongue, or his mouth, to taste the blood streaming from the eye. So actually we want the area just below the eye. And the rest of the area is actually involved him eating it. So in the end, we're left with the area just below the eye, the mouth, one of the cheeks, and the left ear. Now, you're not even told which cheek he actually tastes, but we're supposed to assume that it's the left cheek because he's already sort of licked the right side a bit. So that could have been anyone, either the left or right, but it just so happens to be the left cheek. There are so many things that make this puzzle in particular really difficult. For one thing, you have to actually differentiate which side is which, because he actually mentions gouging her right eye and using his left hand. So you have to make sure that you're talking about your left rather than her right. And the same with the left side. You have the cheek, which isn't even mentioned to which side that's on. You just have to sort of guess or assume that he's eating or tasting the left cheek. And you're supposed to derive all this from this really long and gruesome poem. So in the end, you're left with the locations on the face or the keypad in the order that he mentions, and the code ends up being 4896. And once you put that in, congratulations, you've unlocked the door to the fucking most difficult puzzle in the game. Now that we've done that, the Let's Play shall continue as normal. Thanks for watching.